So, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Canopus Chats with JD Price. I just want to say thank you all for taking the time to watching my previous episodes and for tuning in today. I am excited because my guest is a former student of mine. She was in my class, public speaking class, a couple of years ago. And she is doing amazing things in the community. And I thought it would be great to have her share with you today some of the amazing things that she is doing to empower individuals within the community. And so my guest today is none other than Skye Holly. Give her a round of applause. Yay! Skye, welcome to Canopus Chats. How are you today?
I'm well. I'm really well. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored to be here.
You are welcome. So in my intro, I said it's been years, gently putting it. How long has it been since I've seen you? I know this is a different medium, we're face to face, but now at least we're getting to see each other in this context. How long has it been?
I think I last saw you 2004. I'd like to say 2004 or 2005, but I believe it was 04. Yeah.
Okay, so it's been a while. It's been a while.
Yeah,
so much has changed, I'm sure, since you were a student and now you are operating as a professional. And I know that you have started some projects of your own. I'd love to hear about the companies that you've started. So just give us a little bit about that. The industry that you're in and what the company is about.
Sure. I am a writer. I've always been a writer as far as I'm concerned. I was doing it as soon as I learned how to pick up a pencil. And I have two companies at the moment. One is a for-profit business. The other is a nonprofit organization, which is fairly new. So my for-profit organization is called Make Believe. And Make Believe is a writing and editorial consulting service. So for people who need assistance with their writing, whether it's professional, whether it's creative, if you need a co-writer, if you need a ghostwriter, if you need someone to draft letters for you, if you need editing services, that's what I provide through Make Believe.
So is that your for-profit organization? Okay.
Yeah, Make Believe is the for-profit organization, and I started Make Believe, I'd like to say 2008 or 2009, I think 2008. And in 2020, this year, I started Black Ivy Prep. So Black Ivy Prep is a nonprofit organization, and while I was working with so many different individuals, assisting them with writing, they would ask me to help them or help family members or some of their colleagues at work with a lot of their academic pursuits, whether that was editing an essay for a law school application or helping a son or daughter get into college. I was asked, to look over applications, guide them through it, look over drafts, just kind of help them navigate that process. So what led me to start Black Ivy Prep was realizing that a lot of the clients that I had were well-paying, very well connected and resourced and able to afford what I was charging, at the time. But I noticed that a lot of people who would hear about me word of mouth, when they came to me and then I gave them my rate sheet, they couldn't afford it. So this would be grandparents, raising children. This would be people who have lower incomes. This would be first generation college students or first generation attending, let's say, a high school in the US. So I decided to start Black Ivy Prep in order to reach underserved communities, underserved individuals, and to, bridge those gaps, as far as achievement, as far as academics and scholarship are concerned.
I think that's nice. I like the name. Both companies' names are great. So Make Believe and then the Black Ivy Prep has a nice ring to it. But
Thank you.
with it is it seems as if it communicates a message that the opportunities are beyond just the regular. When we think of the Ivies, we ascribe to it a certain kind of status, and so the Black Ivy Prep seems as if it alludes to giving a person the gateway or entrance into something that is of status. Was that a thought behind the name, or not at all?
It was a little, and when you think of the Ivy Leagues, it's tend to be regarded as, you know, upper echelon education.
Right.
But it's also looked at as a place where people are shut out of, right?
Okay, that's
particularly Black and Hispanic, Indigenous peoples, they seem to be shut out of those opportunities in comparison to their white counterparts. Now, when you look at HBCUs, they're commonly referred to as Black Ivies, because they provide quality education. They provide, you know, an Afrocentric slant or angle to the education. And there's this divide or debate, you know, if you're someone of color, do you aspire to attend an HBCU, or do you aspire to attend the Ivy Leagues?
So here you are offering to your clients opportunities that would sometimes be non-existent for some, or inaccessible, I would say. So they will hear about these schools or the process of applying to school, or as you've mentioned, some of them is for college entrance, law degrees, and other avenues that will advance them in their careers. But sometimes the process to get to where they need to go is daunting. They might not have the skills or the resources. And you are providing that forum. You're the conduit almost to them getting to that end zone, or to that area that they want. Was this always your thought? How did you go about launching, or what motivated you at the beginning to launch these companies?
I think the motivation came after helping a lot of people achieve, you know, their career goals or achieve their academic goals, but then realizing that people who have goals, but no one to support them in that process, it was discouraging for me. I didn't have as much pleasure in assisting as I initially thought that I would. I was just doing this for fun. You know, when I first started doing admissions consulting, I wasn't charging people. I just thought, oh, this is fun. I like paperwork. It sounds weird, but at the time, a lot of applications, you know, they were on paper. Not everything was digital the way that it is now. So I would look over for friends or for people that I met through word of mouth. And I just liked filling in bubbles, you know, I liked checking boxes off, and it was fun. And then I noticed people getting into college, getting into law school, getting into these professional programs, med school, and then they're doing okay for themselves. 3 years time, 4 years time, you know, some of them are tackling their debts and they're doing really well. But then I noticed that those clients I was helping, they weren't helping my community. They weren't bringing their finances, their talents, their skills, their resources, their connections. They weren't bringing that to my community. So it made me feel a little ashamed of myself. And by that time I had started charging. So I'm getting a decent amount, you know, for the services that I'm offering. These people are making really decent money. But then people in my neighborhood and the surrounding neighborhoods were still in the same position. And I felt that I have to do something to change that. Didn't know what it was exactly yet, because the money was okay. You know, I could put a little into the savings, I could tackle some bills, but I didn't really know how to kind of venture into that. Yeah.
So when did you know? So you're thinking about it and you see the need, there's a deficit, and you're mulling over the idea of doing something that you can be proud of, and that would also benefit your surrounding neighbors and the people within the community. When did it dawn on you, or when did it click, that moment of epiphany maybe, that said, aha, this is it?
The click, I would say, came about 2 years ago, 2 to 3 years ago. I have an 18-year-old son, and he just finished his freshman year of college.
Wow.
And while he was in high school, thank you. While he was in high school, he was attending a predominantly white institution, a PWI, And I noticed that his experience was so comfy in terms of the guidance he received in terms of college support. There was a lot that I was doing with him at home, but there were some things I didn't have to worry about. I could sit back, I can yawn, and it was being handled. Things were being handled. He was inspired, he was pushed, he was stimulated, and the resources were so vast. But his school building is not too far away from a community that doesn't have the same outcomes. So going to college meetings with him, going to meet his deans or advisors, or even just parent-teacher conferences, I would walk past, certain areas, and then I would get to his school building, a multi-million-dollar building, and feel glad at what he was receiving. But that wasn't enough. I thought it would be really selfish for me only to think of, wow, look at what my son has. Wow, look at what he gets. I don't have to lift a finger. I don't have to bat an eye. But what about another young man who's 16, 17? What about another young lady who's also, in the same position and doesn't know where to begin, doesn't know what a FAFSA is, doesn't know how to draft an essay? So I would say that could have been, he graduated 2019. So between 2017, 2018, I started formulating more concrete ideas of who I wanted to serve and how I would do it.
In launching this and helping to alleviate some of the burden on homes that don't even know how to navigate the process, and to, as you said, to close the gap that exists between the haves and the have-nots, or those who know and those who do not know. Do you conduct private sessions, or do you do workshops? How do you interact with your clients, or is it
a mixture of both?
Mm-hmm.
A mixture of both. A lot of the work is one-on-one. If I'm working with a minor, I try to work in conjunction with their parents or their guardians, whoever they're living with or who's raising them. So I'll do some initial meetings with a parent. I'll do some meetings with, the student, and then I'll have some meetings with them together. So it may be a family workshop. So we navigate the process from beginning to end. And that depends also on what year I'm meeting them, if they're a high school student or if they're a college student looking to transfer.
That makes sense. What would be ideal? What would be the ideal time for you, based on doing this for almost 3 years now, and you've been doing it longer, but in the strategic way? What would you say is the ideal time for a person to start the process to meet with you?
For first-time college students, I would say if I can meet you in 9th grade, we're solid. Nice. We're really solid. I can work with you from there. Even 10th, I would prefer 9th grade. There are a lot of people that I get junior year, because that's when some students and their families are thinking about college. There are a lot of people I get senior year, a few weeks before, let's say, an application is due. But I would prefer to build a relationship with you. I'm really big on relationship building. And if I can have you in 9th grade, I think that's an awesome opportunity for us to learn each other, for us to develop, as partners in this experience, but to really have the student and their families feel strong about where the student is going academically, socially, and also professionally.
Nice. I think that's great. I love the part about the building of the relationship, because then you are able to understand the nuances, the personality types, and you also, people change and develop as they're going along. So you're there for part of the journey, and you're able to document as well as to assess the progression and make good recommendations. Now, you have looked back at those whom you've helped, and indeed, you have a nice portfolio of clients, right? How would you say their educational trajectory has changed because of their affiliation with you and the services that you offer?
Number one, I would say confidence. I have some students or some families, or even adults I'll do consulting with. Sometimes it becomes an academic, a law school or a college or a grad school application consulting experience. And sometimes it kind of merges as a career consulting experience, especially when you have someone who is looking to change careers. I would say that the confidence that is built and they're discovering more of themselves. I really like people to examine their motivations behind things.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like them to examine their short-term as well as their long-term goals.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when those become more concrete, I'm a writer first. So I want things to be really clear,
Mm-hmm.
really spelled out. And as people do that, they're building a sort of foundation for themselves. Even if they already have a defined and a concrete goal, they're building a clear picture of it, and that develops and develops until it's, you know, the size of a skyscraper. So getting into your top school or maybe your number 2 choice school at times is an accomplishment. It's an ego booster, but it also is a reward to see that you've been able to put in time. You've dealt with many edits from me. You've dealt with my emails, my phone calls, and you've survived me. I think that kind of means, hey, you're ready for the world now.
Oh my goodness.
I'm not that easy. So
Okay.
if you survive me, I'm like, you know, you're going, I'm a New Yorker. So they say if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. If you get through me, I don't think there's anything you can do.
So what are some of the things that you require of the students and the families? Because, you know, sometimes when people hire a consultant, the idea is that they do everything for you. And so clearly you're saying that it's a partnership, a relationship. Yeah. So you are vested in it, in helping them to create pathways to their successes, but they have to own it and they have to participate. What are some of the things that these individuals have to do? So from the student standpoint and from the parents' standpoint.
Commitment. If I've had an experience just last year where I had to drop a client, I said, I'm returning your money. This relationship is not going to go forward, because they weren't committed. And that shows me that there could be a lot of factors at play of why you're not committed, but that is showing me that I can't help you the way that I would like. And I can't help you achieve the results that you're asking me to help you achieve if you're not committed. So commitment is definitely number one. I have these families and students that I partner with. I say clients, but we're really partners. I have them fill out surveys and questionnaires, because I like paperwork. They don't.
I remember, I heard that. I think organizational consultant is calling your name too. Hey, come over here.
I like learning as much as I can about people. And while I'm learning about someone, I like them to learn more about themselves. And we do like pre and post evaluations. What have you learned from yourself? Who do you see yourself now? How do you see yourself after working with me for 6 months, or working with me for a year, or working with me for 6 weeks? Besides those questionnaires and surveys, which I'm really big on, I develop reading lists for all of my clients. And I develop reading lists according to their personality that I've learned, but also based on what their goals are. Here's some nonfiction reading. Here is some fiction reading that you should. Here's some articles. Here's some research. Here's some novels. And I expect them to build and grow in the time that we're working together. So there's homework.
Now I can see why the commitment is needed.
Yeah, it's definitely a process. You know, it's this journey, but I want it to be affirming. I want it to be empowering, and I want it to be lasting, long lasting after you reach that acceptance letter, or, you know, whether it's for an internship, or whether it's for law school, or whether it's for the high school that, you know, you're wanting your daughter to get into. I want those impressions that maybe our time together has made. I want those to sort of filter on into your life, even if they're just in traces and they're not so concrete at first. They're really up in your face in the beginning, but they'll move a little more distant, right, as time goes on. But that doesn't mean that they don't stick with you. And that's a part of it.
I'm thinking these are the clients that you meet, and in my mind, I'm thinking about students, and there are different types of learners. There are some students who are great, top of the class, and working with them sometimes it's easy because they, on paper, they look great. So maybe it's easier to help them creating the path. And I understand that you mentioned that commitment is necessary for the success of the relationship. But what about those students who maybe underperforming and we still want them to excel and to attain success in an academic higher institution, how do you work with families whose children's grade might not be up there? And I know it's a whole person really that the college should be looking at, but sometimes we experience cognitive dissonance where our reality doesn't match what our dreams are. So, you know, how do you work with those types of clients when they come in with these expectations that maybe are too grandiose or not necessarily easily achievable? Let's put it that way.
You know what? I will say that working with those students and those families presents less of a challenge at times.
I could imagine.
And I think a lot of times because they're so eager, like they're like, oh, really? I've got to do all of this. But at the same time, I want it so bad. I want it so bad. And I think having a voice is really important.
Yeah.
And because I ask a lot of questions, and it kind of throws some people off. For some reason, it tends to throw young ladies off a little more, or just some of the ones I've had over the past 2 years. It's kind of like, why do you want to know that? Do you want to be in my business? You know, but I think that working with the student who on paper doesn't have a stellar GPA is a challenge, but sometimes it's less of a challenge than the student who has all the 4 stars, the 4.0 GPA, community service, you know, internships, study abroad, all of these different, you know, high accolades and experiences. After all of that, sometimes they're a little flat. Sometimes those students tend to be boring because they've only done status quo and they sort of had a lot of things just mapped out for them and they followed it. So it's a little tougher getting their personalities to come out. And I'll be frank, sometimes those students are the ones that want you to do all the work for them because they're quite used to it. Where I like a little hustle mentality, you know, a little grind. And for the students who are really, really eager, even though they don't understand something, there are some tense meetings and frustration, but a lot of them hang in there. They don't give up because they see it as this is their only shot.
Wow. You're doing amazing things, and I can only imagine the success stories and the reports that you have received from families about you know, aiding them in the process, because it can be daunting for some, and especially when they don't understand the school system, and especially for the first generation college students and or you know those who are blazing the trail for their families, and there's a lot of pressure on them. So to have someone like you to lend your expertise and help them navigate their way through this course, I think that's really tremendous and just commendable. Now we're running out of time, and I'm thinking, how can people find you if they would like to partner with you for their families? And you know, you're reachable, so tell us how can they find you?
Oh, sure. I don't advertise, which is really weird.
I know.
So I've been hearing a lot about doing more of that. But for individuals who are looking for writing assistance, my Make Believe organization, I'm reachable by email. And that email is makebelieveny@gmail.com.
Okay.
For adults and students who are looking for assistance with consulting in terms of career or education, you can find me at Black Ivy Prep, and that's my Instagram. So they get in the DMs that way.
Okay, but you know that's great for all the social media savvy and internet accessibles. Those who cannot, we have to figure out another way to communicate to them. But no, honestly, I'll
be changing another phone line. So on those mediums, it's weird because I meet people at a lot of events.
Right.
So I just pass out cards and when they ask for them, and that really does it. Or I have strangers call me because I helped their colleague or their neighbor, and that, you know, is what happens. But I'm working on some things, particularly with Black Ivy Prep, in order to have the word out more in different formats for those who aren't internet savvy. But you know, in the places where people really need it. I don't know, a billboard. or a poster.
Well, now we're talking. And so, your goal initially was to reach within the community, certain periphery, and as your services preempts you and your work speaks for you, then other people are going to be inclined and want to participate. Your job is to think about, are you going to expand your business, beyond you, and or you're going to get a team of people and, take it beyond just Skye.
Beyond the one-man bands, yes.
Right. So, but I think it's great what you're doing. Now, as we wrap up our segment, if you had to think of a quote that would surmise or summarize your worth, what it is that you do for these families and these communities, which quote or maybe poem, if you like, would you like?
Let's see. I like quotes, so that's to pick one. I was thinking of two in particular that come to mind.
Okay, go for it.
About 19 or 20 years ago, I wrote a mission statement for myself.
Mm-hmm.
One sentence mission statement, and I said, telling the human experience and inspiring a greater one.
Wow.
And there's so many different ways to tell stories, and I love hearing people's stories. I love writing them. I love sharing them and helping them build onto their story. So my mission statement would definitely be something that's an anchor in terms of what I do. There's another quote I really, really like. It's from William Shakespeare, and it's in the play The Tempest. And I think it's Act 5. Alonso, I think, is the character at the beginning of that scene, and he says, "I long to hear the story of your life."
Wow.
And I love, love, love that quote so much. And I think that inspires a lot of what I do as a writer, as someone working for the community. I want to hear people's stories, and I want to, help them add on those chapters that will give them the ending that they are hoping for.
Skye, I think that's perfect. It speaks volume of who you are. And when I met you as a student, I knew your heart and your passion was writing. And I've been following some of your work that you do in the community as a journalist and all those other facets that I did not focus on today in our talk. It was just to share what it is that you're doing with your business and how you're helping families. And there are many more stories, and I hope that you continue to be the editor and the one that helps to share it with others. Thank you so much for joining me here at Canopus Chats, and families can look into Make Believe or Black Ivy Prep and see how they can also benefit from your services. I'm looking forward to hearing more about what it is that you are doing and how families their lives have been touched by your commitment and the information that you provide them with. Thank you so much, Skye.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.